Welcome back to another YouTube video by the FPL Draft Duo. We're a duo that is dedicated to the FPL Draft. We want to bring the draft to a wider community and show people the game that you're missing out on. Listen in to our weekly podcast where we go in detail around waiver suggestions, trade dilemmas, and give tips and tricks to succeed at the draft.
Follow us on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok for more in-depth discussions around FPL Draft.
As we know, the waiver deadline is 24 hours before the normal FPL deadline, so ensure that you are keeping up to date with all the deadlines so you don't miss any. Missing a couple of deadlines over the next couple of weeks could be detrimental to your FPL draft team. Looking at the deadlines, they're happening on average every 4 to 5 days. Getting trades over the line may be difficult because the trade deadline is 48 hours before the normal FPL deadline. Maybe it's good to send a few trades mid-game week to ensure that they are in the system for the next game week. As we know, Chelsea have a fantastic run of fixtures over the next 5 or 6 game weeks. We're going to talk about a couple of Chelsea assets that may improve your team. Other teams that we're going to talk about are Newcastle and Wolves, who also have some favourable fixtures over the next couple of game weeks. Our waiver of the week this week was Ben Mee with a massive 14 points, a goal and an assist. Fair play if you got him in your team. Our punt of the week was Charlie Taylor. Charlie Taylor featured heavily in a couple of normal FPL teams, but if you got him in the draft, hopefully you cashed in on them 10 points.
A couple of players that we've mentioned in previous videos are still very good picks, the likes of Elise, Langa and Paqueta. Although we reference them as 1 week punts or waiver picks, they now are long-term holds.
Looking at our watch list, which is a new series that we're going to do, which talks about players that are not going to be on the waiver but may be good targets for a trade. First on that list is Fabian Schär. Fabian Schär always racks up good expected goal involvements. He also has some fantastic fixtures over the next 5. We're going to reference these fixtures a lot in this week's video. They play Everton, Spurs, and then Fulham, Luton and Forest. 3 fantastic fixtures for a defensive pick. Newcastle have been very good at home and kept 4 clean sheets at home in the last 4 games. Schär racked up an expected 0.42 goal involvements versus United. He also has racked up a 0.88 expected goals this season and a 0.7 expected assists without returning. So Schär is a very good defensive pick and also may cash in some attacking returns.
Next up is Hee Chan. So Wolves play Burnley at home and Nottingham Forest at home in their next 2 game weeks.
He has 7 goals and 2 assists this season, but has only got a 3.69 expected goals. This may tell us that he's actually a better finisher than we expect. Hopefully he will continue to overperform his XG and be a good pick for the next coming game weeks. He is also a very high trade value. If you were sick of Chan and wanted to cash in, maybe it's a good time to upgrade, and the next player might be a good player. Phil Foden has some very favourable fixtures over the next 5. City do have a blank in 18, and if a player wanted to get rid of him because of that blank, maybe it's a good time to pick him up. He continues to post good stats this season, and with the imminent return of Kevin De Bruyne, this actually might help him produce more goals and assists this season rather than hinder him. The problem with Foden is he's always going to be a rotation risk, so it's to be expected if you pick him up, but I think currently he could be undervalued, going under the radar for a good City side.
Next is Matheus Cunha. Cunha has 4 goals so far this season, and although he is overlooked by a lot of FPL players because he's not usually one to return, he is very undervalued, especially going into game weeks 15 and 16 where Wolves play Burnley and Forest at home.
He also has missed 4 big chances this year. He has returned 3 times in his last 3 games, so if you're looking to pick up an extra striker in a smaller league, Cunha could be a good pick for the next 2 game weeks, if not a long-term hold.
Next up is our Game Week 14 waiver suggestions. In this segment of the video, we're going to go through our waiver suggestions for goalkeepers, defenders and midfielders from small to big size leagues.
This week we have 2 possible pickups in the goalkeeping position. Jose Sa came off with a small injury. It's not expected to be too bad, so Bentley might get Game Week 15. If you're lucky, he might get the 2 game weeks. There is a possibility Jose Sa comes back and plays Game Week 15, but because of the quick turnaround, Bentley is likely to start against Burnley. The issue with Bentley is that Wolves have only kept 1 clean sheet this season, but you'd like to think them fixtures against Burnley and Forest could be a chance to improve on them statistics. Next up is Dubravka, and with an injury to Pope, which looks like he could be out for a couple of game weeks, he could be a great pickup. They play Everton, Spurs, Fulham, Luton and Forest. Newcastle have been very good at home defensively, keeping 4 clean sheets in their last 4 home games. And looking at these fixtures, you'd like to think Dubravka will get in on that action. If you have a spot in the goalkeeping position, Dubravka could be a good short-term punt in that position. Moving on to defenders in larger size leagues. Dawson could be a very good pick for the next 2 game weeks against Burnley and Forest. He's a nail player for Wolves and has a very good aerial threat. As we said, Wolves have only kept 1 clean sheet this season, but even if they don't, you could look to Dawson to get some returns in the air.
As you can see, this is in those 12 plus size leagues, so you are just looking for these punts for that 1 game week of the Burnley or for that Forest in those bigger size leagues. If you're in the 8 plus or even if you're in a 10 plus size leagues, maybe look to other defenders. But if it's in that 12 plus where you are looking to get an edge over those players, trying to find a player, Dawson could be a great pick.
Next up is Badiashile. He has started Chelsea's last 2 games, and if he continues to nail down his plays over the next couple of game weeks, he could be a great pickup. The issue here is that Reece James, Gusto and Cucurella are all in line to come back for a couple of them good fixtures. If your team is set up well and you have an option to keep him on your bench and he continues to start, he could be very fruitful over the next couple of game weeks. Chelsea are one of the top teams in terms of the fixture ticker, and if you could get a nail player in that Chelsea defence, it could improve your team greatly. Coming in top of our waiver suggestions in larger size leagues is Livramento. We talked about Newcastle being very good at the back, and he is now preferred to Lewis Hall at left back. He also has a very good attacking threat and could be a great hold until the likes of Dan Burn or Botman return to the team.
Next up is Luke Shaw. So United play Chelsea, Bournemouth and Liverpool so in the next 4 game weeks. Although they are very tough fixtures, Luke Shaw is back in the United team, and as we've seen in previous seasons, he can get attacking returns.
He is on some set pieces and gets relatively high up the pitch. United have been very poor at the back, but if they start to solidify that defence, Shaw could be a good option.
Although in the short term, Shaw mightn't be the best pick, but when we're looking at the likes of Luke Shaw, we're looking at him as a long-term, season-long hold. If you don't want to have Luke Shaw, other players within your draft league will rate Shaw highly because of his high ceiling previous years. So if you do have him, he could be a great asset to get across in a trade.
Because of these tight fixtures, Kanate might get the start for Liverpool against Sheffield. Matip started in game week 14, but if you think he's going to start in game week 15, a Liverpool defender versus Sheffield could be a good option. Liverpool have a very high chance of a clean sheet against Sheffield, and if you think he's going to start, it's a likely 6-pointer. He will be a short-term hold because he'll always be in rotation with Matip, but if he gets in a long term, he could be a good hold for the next 4 or 5 game weeks. Top of our list is John Stones. Although there is many issues with John Stones in terms of City losing that fixture in game week 18 and the amount of rotation in City's squad, Stones is at risk, but he's always going to be an improvement to your team. As Jaxie mentioned, even if you don't want him, others in your draft league might. If he gets a good run of fixtures, he's going to have a high trade value, and if you don't want to keep him in your team, you could trade him. He has played in that midfield role previously. City have a lot of midfielders this year, but if he plays up there, his 2 goals and 2 assists last season could be improved on this season.
Next up is our game week 15 midfield waiver suggestions. So these suggestions are in 12 plus size leagues. So first up is Jordan Ayew. So Palace play Bournemouth at home in game week 15. Now although Ayew didn't start when Elise and Eze were back fully fit, but now that Eze has picked up an injury and is likely to miss the next 3 to 4 game weeks, Ayew does seem nailed for that very good fixture against Bournemouth.
Another option is Andres Pereira. Fulham have a very good fixture run over the next 5, with 4 of them fixtures being 2 on the FDR. Andres Pereira is back in that Fulham team and is on set pieces, so he could be a good route to points either in play or from a dead ball. He hasn't played 90 minutes in the last 4 or 5 game weeks, so there is a rotation risk there, but in any of those fixtures, Andres may have a high ceiling. Following on from that, another Fulham asset could be Willian. Although he didn't start in game week 14, we expect him to start in game week 15 and a couple of them fixtures from 15 to 19. He is 35 years of age, so expect some benches, but he has been on penalties for Fulham this year and could be a good route to points.
Just to plug in our podcast, we do go into more in-depth detail as to why Willian may not feature this game week. So if you do like this video and you do like the content here, for more in-depth discussions, you can take a look at our podcast, FPL Draft Duo.
Another Newcastle asset is Bruno Guimaraes. In the draft, 2 and 3 points could be very valuable, especially over this Christmas period. Bruno is a nailed player for Newcastle, and over these next couple of weeks, that could be very, very important. He does get in on the act in terms of returns when Newcastle do well. Over the next 5 game weeks, you expect him to win some of those matches convincingly, and hopefully Bruno could get in on the action. If not, then 2 or 3 points, as we said, could be crucial to the win. On our punts section in larger leagues, Bellegarde has been impressive for Wolves and has returned twice in the last 3 game weeks. The risk here is that he gets whipped early, but they do play Burnley and Forest in the next 2. If you're in a large size league and you want to attack the fixtures rather than go for the steady Eddie, Bellegarde could be a good option. He does take some set pieces, but with Neto coming back, that may change. If you want to attack them Burnley and Forest fixtures, Bellegarde could be a spicy punt. Although Trossard is a yo-yo player on the waiver, they play Luton next week. He has started the last 3 games for Arsenal and looks like a more nailed player than usual. The issue here is that he gets rested for Luton, but if he does play against Luton and plays 90 minutes, he could haul. The issue with Trossard is you're probably going to be looking to waiver him out over the next couple of game weeks if he doesn't stay nailed.
With the heavy run of fixtures in the month of December, to win your draft games, you are looking for those nailed players, and Conor Gallagher is one of those nailed players. Chelsea have a great run of fixtures as well, from game week 16 right up to game week 21, and with Conor Gallagher having 5 assists so far this season, he has gone very under the radar. So with his chance of returns and his nailedness and those good fixtures, he is a fantastic pick in those 8 to 10 size leagues.
Top of our waiver pile this week is KDB. He may be picked up in smaller leagues, but if not, you got to pick him up. He also could be a good option to trade for now that he's still injured and not likely to come back and start for another couple of game weeks. If you want to play the long game and get KDB in, you will be very happy that you have him in your team come January. City are always going to score, and KDB is integral to City. He got 7 goals and 16 assists last season and is still likely to rack up some good numbers even with a half season under his belt.
I hope you enjoyed this week's YouTube video. For more in-depth discussions, do follow our podcast, FPL Draft Duo, and we will be posting regular injury updates on Twitter and Instagram, so do stay tuned on all social media platforms for all up-to-date FPL Draft Duo news.
FPL Draft Duo out.